I wanted to kind of point out an example where we layer. So if we're layering it, then we pull up the physical properties of the composite system that we're using. So again, a Denton shade in the Evanesce system has 90% opacity. And going back to that photograph of that molar, again, the Denton is a more opaque layer. And as we get up to the enamel, that's where we're gonna have the more translucent material. And so enamel clear has 50% opacity. So it's much more translucent. You can see that in the example up here. So going back to our template, well, in this case that you see here, we might do a really quick mock-up at a composite and use a template to create a template for our lingual wall. Then remove that composite from the mock-up because we weren't layering it in. We weren't really concerned about the aesthetics. We were concerned more of the shape. And then using that matrix that we see here on the right-hand side, we can take and beveling our preparation for a good color blend. We can then use that matrix to form our lingual wall. So we did an intraoral mock-up. We created a template from that mock-up for the lingual wall. We prepare the tooth with an irregular bevel, and we'll talk more about that coming up. And then we got in there with our etch, rinse that off, placement of the MPA Max adhesive, thinning that out, getting all the solvent off, and then coming back in and curing that. So now you can see we have a nice glistening surface. Then thinning that out, curing that, and then placing some, in this case, I used enamel incisal. I didn't have the enamel clear, so we used the incisal, and I manipulated that into our template, again, made out of template, our silicone material, and then was able to position that, again, back onto the lingual of this tooth, cured that on, and what you'll see is that it created a very nice, very clear lingual surface. And sometimes I've thought, well, you know, if the restoration is going to be A2, could I not just do this lingual wall out of Denton A2 or enamel A2? But if we want to create some enamel translucency, we have to have that edge be translucent. So one of the advantages of just placing translucent on the lingual is that it will help our final aesthetics. Now where the Denton is more opaque, we're coming back in there with some A3.5 Denton. We want the color to be a little bit warmer, and we want to have that opacity. Without that opacity, our restoration is going to look gray because of the darkness of the oral cavity. So we position that where we envision that Denton layer to be. And you can see its warmth compared to that lingual translucent layer. And as we place that Denton layer to the facial of this thin, clear lingual wall, you can see that our opacity is increased. We can no longer see through that lingual shell. Now, once that Denton layer is in there, that's going to create the opacity that we need. We then switch over to the A2 enamel layer, just a little higher value, a little bit more translucent, and this layer will then allow that warmth of the Denton layer to come through. So at the very end, I like to go back to something like the enamel incisal, again, something that's very translucent, just to increase the transparency of my enamel layer. It just creates more depth if that's appropriate for the tooth that you're then restoring. Once we have the tooth and all the different layers of the composite placed and thoroughly cured, I go back in there to recontour it with again a carbide burb, trying not to put a lot of scratches in the material so we can polish it out easily. So we begin to refine that. And then we can get in there with our ASAP polishers, the spirals here, and just quickly polish that up. So again, it's just a system that we want to use. We use the purple first, and then we get in there with the peach type of spiral, and you can see it gives us a very nice shine and contour.